Yo, what's going on, people? Welcome to Validated Radio in conjunction with Tent TV. You are now tuned into the Essence. And I am chilling with my man Abe, MC Abe, all the way out there overseas, doing his music and everything. We were
You
supposed to,
already know.
yeah, man, we were supposed to link up, and I know you just, you had a client that needed some things done, and you got a little caught up, and it's all good, but we're here now, you know what I
A
mean?
very persistent client.
You
It's all
gotta
good.
love the persistent ones, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, it's work.
Yeah, no doubt, definitely. So yeah, man, everybody, you tuned into the Essence, man. This is episode 12. And tonight we are gonna talk about the growth of hip hop culture.
Hmm.
Um, and just culture in general. You know what I mean? Because once we get on a tangent and we start going at it, there's no telling where the topics are gonna end up at and what we're gonna end up talking about. But
Right,
um,
right.
but yeah, man, episode 12, the essence, the growth of hip hop culture. Where do you want to start, man?
You know what's I've noticed, and me and you both are probably not really into too big into the drill scene,
Right.
but man, I don't know if it was because of rest in peace, Pop Smoke, and had
I
a
ain't gonna
big
lie, man.
that.
Pop Smoke's album was kind of dope, bro.
It was no,
I'm not even
I
gonna, I'm
it,
not
it
even gonna,
was
I'm not even gonna hold you. That
no,
album, yeah, man,
and
definitely surprised me, man.
oh hell yeah,
Definitely,
man.
yeah,
And one thing that I've noticed since his album came out, the drill scene kind of exploded over
yeah,
over
but
different countries, man.
yeah, man. I was just talking to somebody else, another project that I've been working on, but in London's got like a huge drill scene too. You know what I mean? And
Right,
and
right.
and, and I mean and now I mean today, man, there's just so many female spitters, man.
Oh
Even
yeah,
even on the drill scene, there's a lot. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
But talking about like Pop Smoke and coming out of Brooklyn, but him and like Fabio Foreign and a few of these other people from out of New York, like they've been doing this for a while. They just
Right,
finally starting to get that look. You know what
right.
I mean? But they've had the drill scene and it's been going on for a while. And of course, that stems
Chicago.
from Chicago. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we could start right there because I've noticed that. I mean, every other week I'm starting to see a new drill video from Switzerland, from France, from South Korea. Like, and these
Yeah,
are people
yeah.
that are just blowing up worldwide. From Italy, I saw one from Italy. Man, these guys had nothing but an Italian drip on, and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and doing the whole drill scene. It's crazy. It's amazing how bad. But the one thing that I am curious to know is, do they really know what drill music is and how it started to marinate? Because we all know drill music from the Chicago scene. And it would be like in the West Coast we weren't called hip hop, we were called gangster rap. So the whole
Yeah,
drill
but that
scene, it has to do with a lot of death and unfortunate events and stuff
yeah.
like that. So my thing is, I wonder if they know that about the actual culture of how drill ended up becoming and manifesting
I
into
don't
what it is.
even know that. Do you know that? Is that something you
I,
can I have no
I
clue.
so for
I'm
example,
not,
I he's very hard into a drill, and he doesn't understand all of it. But and when he raps drill, it's like he does his spin just the way the way the drill rappers rap. You have that sense of how they have their style, the flow, right? He
yeah,
just
yeah.
raps like that, but he's so in tune with it's crazy. It's like he's doing 90s hip hop verses, but like
But
um
on top of drill music,
yeah, like
that's different.
it's
That's
right because it's
I mean,
not
but it's
killing.
not really different because there's a lot of I mean, like even Pop Smoke had bars, man. Like you know what I'm saying? Like just
Right,
some of
right.
the joints on his album surprised me, like over drill beats. But these dudes, like they in their generation, in their time, like they really spitting what it's all about
Right,
in
right,
their
right.
circle and what they do. You know what I mean? That may be a little bit foreign to us a little bit, but for them and for their fans and for their audience, they know exactly what they're talking about. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
that and I mean, with that being said too, I'm guessing like it's just you know, they're doing their own version of it because I mean, obviously you're not gonna rap about killing over here because there's none of that going on, or
right,
there's none of the violence that kind of follows that the drill scene.
right.
So you know, it's like storytelling, but with drill. I mean, I guess you could kind of say because Vaughn, rest in peace, Vaughn too. He
Yeah,
was a
King
big
Von, no doubt.
storyteller too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, so it was like
Vaughn was another one that was lyrical, though. You know what I'm
right,
saying?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Vaughn. I mean, he was talking about his life and he was talking about what goes on where he's from. But at the end of the day, you know, he had something to say. You
right.
know,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and well, I can only speak for right here for Japan. Like I said, they don't for them it's kind of like baffling that you know they think a lot of times that hip hop is just talking, but it's not really what they live
What
because
they what
it's
right. They
right
think it's all entertainment.
exactly. So
Yeah. And in most
I mean I
cases,
don't.
it is.
It is right.
But then there's other cases where it's like, all right, this is not really entertainment.
This is
This
shit.
is really what's popping off. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I mean I can only speak for Japan, but I wonder if any other country that's really adapting to that side of the culture really understand
Right,
what it stems from, what
right.
real music stems from, and that's just kind of like my biggest ponder right now at this point. I mean, don't get
Right.
me wrong, I'm happy that I get to see like Italian, you know, drill artists, like you know, everything is
Right.
almost the same, but we don't really understand what they're saying. So I guess I guess in that I'm surprised, and I guess I like I said I think Pop Smoke had a lot to do with it
Yeah,
because that
yeah,
album was one of the best rap albums too. If not, it could
yeah.
have easily. I mean, for me, it could have easily been up on the Grammy like best rap
It could have
album,
been on that
hip
list.
hop
Yeah,
album.
yeah,
Yeah, it could
absolutely.
have easily been.
Yeah. I
So
mean, and it sucks that he's not here, man, because now that I've listened to his project, I have a newfound respect for him as an
mm,
artist. And it would have been nice to see him here to celebrate that success of his first debut album and to see where he would have went, you know, after
right,
that. You know
right,
what I mean? But yeah, man, I mean, you know, for me, the growth of the culture is so vast, right?
mm,
Because I'm talking 30, 40 years, right?
yeah.
Like,
The youngest.
yeah, like for me, I remember growing up in the Bronx, right? I
Mm,
remember being in Castle Hill projects in the Bronx, and I remember, you know, watching dudes come out and set up DJ equipment. And this is late '70s, man. You know what I
when
mean? So
art when
this was way before Run
where you
DMC,
guys
before it
hold on,
really
Kate,
got popping, right?
let me cut you off. Let me cut you off. Are you talking about the days when the DJs used to steal the electricity from the light post?
Exactly, exactly,
Man,
exactly. I mean, and that carried on into the '80s too. But
yeah.
like just coming from the Bronx from like '78, I think I moved from there in '79. You know what I mean? Before my parents moved us out to Queens, but was
Mm,
like I remember the Bronx burning, like all the buildings were burning down. The owners of buildings were doing, you know, insurance scams and everything. Like the Bronx was just a horrible place to be at that time.
yeah,
And out of all of that nonsense, out of all of that madness, came this art form, right? And
right.
I remember I used to live on the 16th floor, and I remember like people being above me, you know, throwing parties on the terrace and whatnot, just
Yeah,
partying all night long and this music that I had never heard before, right? This culture that I had never seen, and you know, jokers with, you know, letters printed on shirts and different types of hats and different
uh,
types of fashion and styles and all that. And like I didn't really get into it at that age because I was too young. But by the time I moved to Queens, then
that's great.
it all started to sink in.
Right.
You know what I mean? It started to sink in, and I happened to be, you know, privileged enough to come from Queens, where I got to see people like LL, and I got to see people like Run DMC. I got to see them in their heyday when they were just starting out, man. Like when they were still neighborhood dudes, like that were just come through the block, or you can see them at the corner store or whatever. You know what I mean? And that, for me, it all starts from there, right? And you still see elements of all of that today. You still see people in their neighborhoods. Like, certain things in hip hop just don't change, right?
Right.
You come from you got to come from a neighborhood. You got to have some place where you rep. You know what I'm saying? Whatever city and state you rep, and you got to rep that. You got to put something on your back. You know, when you come into this game, you know, you definitely have to have a certain style about you as far as dressing. Nobody in hip hop walks around looking like they don't know how to fucking dress. It's just it's just not part of the culture. It's just not part of what we do. You know what I mean? You gotta have some fly in you, you know. So seeing all of that, you know, in the 70s and going into the 80s, where I started to become a part of the culture, you know, performing and you know, things of that nature. You know, it feels good to even see it years later and to see where a lot of people have taken it. You know what I mean? Like you say, like the 90s was a great time period because we were coming off the end of the 80s, which was a very Afrocentric period in hip hop. You know, from the native tongues and everybody in that conglomerate that was just dope artists and are still around today as artists and have taken their talents and branched off and done other things. And then going into the 90s, you know, where a lot of the street criteria started to take over the music, you know. But we saw that in the late 90s. We saw that in the late 80s with NWA, like, really heavy. You know what I mean? Like, I think like and the media coins it gangster rap. You know what I'm saying? NWA never said we make gangster rap. You know what I'm saying? It's just not what they didn't do that. You know what I mean? But like, seeing it come from there and then breezing through the 90s and then continuing to go on. Like, nowadays, it's so vast because there isn't just one type of style of hip hop that's dominating. You know what I mean?
There's multiple subgenres within there's multiple I guess you could say subgenres within the hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish that the masses, and I wish that the media would break it down into sections like that sometimes. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of artists that I think get overlooked because they just get thrown in the bag of, oh, that's hip hop. You know what I mean? Or that's rap music. You know what I'm saying? And it's not necessarily, it's all a part of the hip hop culture, but there's different facets of rap. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's different facets of rap, man. Like,
it's like, for example, if you go to the 90s, you can't compare a Wu-Tang with a Mobb Deep. It's just the genre within that was just completely different.
And in a lot of ways, it was. Yeah. I mean,
or a better comparison would be, let's say, a Tribe Called Quest with a Wu-Tang or a Mobb Deep. Like, there was different.
I like that one better. Right. Yeah. I like that one better. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's true.
You know? Gritty. They were still gritty, like very.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, even if you listen to the differences from a Tribe Called Quest or Jungle Brothers or, you know, Leaders of the New School or something like that was, you know, late 80s, early 90s. By the time we get to 94, by the time Nas drops Illmatic, you know, things start to change. You know what I mean? Things start, then by the time we get to 96, by the time we get to Reasonable Doubt, things are changing. And like, even the South, like Atlanta was already on the map at that time because of Outkast. And what Outkast was doing was nothing, not even considered in a gangster rap sphere. You know what I'm saying? Wasn't even there. They were just giving you their life in times of living in Georgia.
Right.
You know? So I think that that all of those are different branches of hip hop. You know, like, we got this one strong tree that's hip hop culture, but then we got so many branches, man. The branches are, they're just phenomenal branches, bro.
And you got to remember too, the '90s was also an era where hip hop started fusing a lot with R&B. You started having
Right.
12 and Biggie
Yeah.
features. You started having man, it's just so many. I can't even really name a lot of them, but
Yeah.
the fusion within the hip hop was already John
Mm-hmm.
B and Tupac. You
Yeah.
know, like you had these gangster rappers, like the media says, and they were making R&B too. So it was just like, I think the diversity within the hip hop community was just so vast, like you say, that there's really not just a one sector where you could just say, oh, everyone belongs in this sector, and it stays
Yeah,
like that.
man.
No, like,
Like this year,
it's
like I'm looking forward to the Grammys next year only because of the rap album category. You know, like this, like Royce the 5'9" is
oh
nominated.
yeah,
Freddie Gibbs, I believe, is nominated. Like people that you just wouldn't expect to be nominated for a
okay, right,
Grammy.
right, right.
They getting, and I'm mad at myself that I can't remember the other three right now that are on that list. Um,
I think
but
you're talking about for the best
I believe it's best rap album for
oh
this
yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. D Smoke, that new artist
D
from
Smoke, D Smoke is
yeah.
on there. Yeah, there's a couple more as well. I can't remember the rest of them, but
I
just to
wasn't
see
mad at that. I wasn't mad at it though.
just to see
It
Royce
was
the five
yeah,
nine get
yeah,
nominated for a Grammy,
definitely.
I was like, now that's what's up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for years he's been a profound lyricist. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
one of the best at his craft. You know, um, and you can't take that away from him. You can go through
Oh,
his discography and listen to what he's contributed to this culture, and you're like, wow, like this dude, he embodies the spirit of what a hip hop artist is. You know
absolutely.
what I mean? But then nowadays you look and you see newer artists, they embody what hip hop is too, but this is for their generation. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? We can't knock what they're doing because somebody knocked what we was doing when we was a little bit younger and we
Yeah.
was doing what we was doing. People like, oh man, we don't want to hear that rippity rippity hippity hippity. You know what I'm saying? Like people,
That's
you know what I'm
effects.
saying?
That's effects.
Yeah, like
They got a lot of
I
flack, man.
remember I remember older people when I was younger telling me like we don't want to listen to that. They didn't get it.
Right.
They didn't understand. They didn't get it. They thought this was gonna be a fad. They thought this was gonna be something that just was fly by night, like disco music came and went,
Right. Right. Right.
phew, like
Yeah.
gone. You know what I mean? But they didn't understand what we understood, that this was something different, you
Yeah.
know. And for these dudes nowadays, it's something different to them. You know what I'm saying? Anybody that's doing music now, you know, as far as using heavy drill beats and heavy trap beats and stuff like that, like this is their generation. This is their time. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
And
yet,
we can't knock it.
nah,
It's
we can't. Nah, we definitely can't knock it, man. You know what I'm saying? And there's still a lot of lyricists out there. There's a lot of lyricists that you can't really that grew up on '90s stuff. You know what I mean? And their craft is to bring you lyrics and bars. You
right.
know what I'm saying? As opposed to others who want to give you just a hot hook and give you something to dance to in the club. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or something like that. They're both hip hop. They're
Right.
both hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely right. I agree with you 100% with that. And it's sad how some of the older generation of artists of MCs they don't really, they don't really with it. You know, like a lot of them don't really like that, and it's okay. It's not for everyone, but they kind of downplay it. I mean, you know, and that's not cool. Like I said, it's still part of the culture, whether they like it or they don't. It's still a big part of the culture. Um, it still makes us move and dance the way '90s hip hop music. Some of it still was for the club too. It's still the same.
Right. Right.
It's just a different time. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pulled it up. Grammy Award for Best Rap Album nominees for 2020. A Written Testimony, Jay Electronica,
Cool. Okay.
um, Black Habits, D Smoke, The Allegory, Royce the 5'9", and how could I forget King's Disease by Nas is
Yeah.
nominated as well. And then Alfredo between Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist. So even though I said Royce, but I forgot Nas. Like how like
Yeah.
Nas is finally being nominated, like, you know what I'm saying, for a Grammy. Like that's like, even if he's been
Yeah.
nominated before, which I can't go through the scroll and figure it out at this moment, but to be nominated in 2020 when your first album dropped in 94,
94. Man,
like
that's amazing.
that's
That's
monumental, bro.
yeah.
That's monumental for the culture, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and he deserves one. I mean, in that category, I like all of them, but you know, Royce and Nas are like my go-tos, man.
Right,
You know
right,
what
right.
I mean?
I mean,
When
even
I
yeah, you have, and even Freddie Gibbs with the Alchemist, and you know, like
yeah,
it's
I'm
still
not yo,
that's
Freddie's
how I
dope,
would
and
have
you know,
never thought that he
Freddie's
would have
dope,
gone on.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Alchemist is, I mean, one of the best producers to ever do it. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah,
So
hands
that's
down,
why
no doubt.
this
Yeah,
this like this list kind of is like a early 2000s kind of like you would, for me, like I feel like it's like a early 2000s like nomination, because you still in the early 2000s you still had great albums with from a
yeah,
lot of hip hop artists that
yeah,
were nominated but didn't get it. But
right.
it's like one of those lists where you, like you say, you can't believe, like I would never have thought that Jay Electronica would have gone nominated for.
No, I mean, no, being that Jay Electronica got nominated, that pushed Hove into the stratosphere, and he's now tied with Quincy Jones for the most Grammy nods ever at 80 nominations. You know
Wow.
what I mean? Because they got three, Hove got three more off of that Jay Electronica album.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
80 fucking nominations for Grammys, right? And
Not,
the weird thing is with this culture, right? With hip hop culture, they'll say, "Oh, fuck a Grammy, I don't give a fuck." And 9 out of 10 times, I feel like that's bullshit,
yeah.
because a lot of artists will say that shit, but at the end of the day, you want to be recognized by the Academy for your body of work, bro. You know what I'm saying? You want to be
Absolutely.
recognized. You don't
Absolutely.
need it to survive. You don't need it to support yourself or your family, or get the love from, hip hop people like you do. You don't need it. But at the
Right.
end of the day, if you can get nominated, or you can get a Grammy for the work that you do, that's like the highest honor of music. And we've
Right.
always been overshadowed in the Grammys. The Grammys have always put bullshit in the category, and somebody else won that. We diehard hip hop people was like, "Oh, get the fuck out of here! You shouldn't have
Don't,
won."
that's that Macklemore and Kendrick time, man. Yeah, man. Everyone was buzzed off of that one, man. That was the
Yo,
biggest enough of in like
it's
ever.
horrible when they do that, because it makes us feel like, as much as this culture has grown, and as much as this culture dominates what goes on in the world, what goes on in advertising, what goes on in television, what goes on in the radio. It's all dominated by hip hop music in one way or another,
Absolutely.
right? So why can't you get it right at the award show? Like, who's sitting in that boardroom, or who's sitting in that meeting, that doesn't know that this is what should be nominated, as opposed to the shit that you're putting up there? You know what I mean? Like, I've
Mm.
always thought about that. Like, who's in that room that makes that decision? Who's on that panel that makes that decision of what gets nominated and what doesn't? And I know it's a vast thing. I've heard about it before, but I've never really researched it or anything, because at
Right.
the end of the day, I never really felt like it was going to make a difference anyway. So I didn't
Right.
give it that much of my energy. But, you know, the voting process of the Academy has always been something that's never favored us.
Right.
You know what I mean? As a culture, as far
Hmm.
as hip hop is concerned. You know what I mean?
I
So
think
I'm
there's a
glad to
bias.
see, huh?
I believe that there's a lot of bias in that, because it's
Yeah,
like, and I'm pretty sure they know what should be nominated, but they just
yeah.
refuse to
I
act like
mean,
they don't.
a few years ago, Jay-Z had, what was it, 8 or 10 nominations it was for 444, and he didn't win any, right? And
Right.
then this year, The Weeknd, his album was like number one for, I don't know how long it was, but he absolutely got snubbed. He got no nominations at all. And he had like the
Oh
number
yeah.
one
Oh
album
yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for X amount of time throughout 2020, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, who makes that decision, bro? You know what I'm saying? Who makes that? Like,
Right.
I'm not a big Weekend fan, but you got to give just due where
Where
it's
is
deserved. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? You got to give him his props where it's deserved. You had the #1 album for X amount of time. You sold X amount of copies. Why are you not nominated? You know what I
Right.
mean? But then I guess they felt like, okay, we gave them a Grammy, you know, rap album category that we've never seen before. So somebody got to get stiffed. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
That's
It's,
exactly, man.
it's
That's where I'm telling you, like, it's just like it's unbelievable, man. Because it's like you look. There's us at it, like we're really happy with this list now, right? Whoever wins, I'm gonna be very comfortable. I'm not gonna complain because they're all albums that are okay. Sure, maybe the Nas album deserves more than the D Smoke or whatever, but you're not gonna get mad still. Like you're not gonna be
right.
very disappointed. You're because it's like it's not gonna go to like a Macklemore versus a Kendrick Lamar, Ken Mad City, and
Yeah.
when everyone knows
Yeah.
that fucking album was the best body of work that whole fucking year. Like it's just there was no, not even Drake's album. I feel like Drake's album wasn't up to par with Kendrick Lamar's album, but then not even Drake ends up winning the Grammy. You give it to fucking Macklemore. It's just
Yeah,
to me,
man.
it's
Yeah.
just
The masses and it gets done like that. And unfortunately, you know, I mean, it's something that's so fucked up for the culture. Because for us, it's like, you know, once again, we feel like we're getting shitted on. You know what I mean? Black and brown people. We like feel like, well, damn, we can't even get recognized for our music, which dominates the culture in American society. But then on the flip side, we can't even get recognized for that. You know what I'm
right.
saying? And that shit, that shit kind of stings, man. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? It stings, but it doesn't stop us from doing what we're doing. It just makes us stronger. It makes
Mm.
us stronger. It makes us step our game up 10 times even more and say, you know what, we got to go even harder. And just because you don't nominate me or don't put me in that category, that's not going to stop what we're
Mm.
doing. You know what I mean? That's what I mean. Hip hop has always been about that. It's always been about telling you our story from
Yeah.
where we come from. You know what I mean? And letting you bear witness to our world. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I mean, so you know, that's just those are just different ways that I think that the culture could still grow a little bit more. You
Mm.
know,
Absolutely.
like you said, like having a Drake and Kendrick in a category and Macklemore gets the Grammy, like you know,
Yeah,
like
that doesn't make sense whatsoever at
it
all.
doesn't, it
It's like
doesn't, it does, and
like
that's
I'm not
that's not throwing any
no
shade to
hate to
Macklemore.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
no, because he did his
Macklemore has some pretty nice. He has some pretty decent top 40 radio songs that was all
yeah,
right. I'm not knocking the dude.
yeah,
But
but I mean,
I'm
it's
just
not
saying,
the
like,
album worth, like,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
man, it's
yeah.
insane. It's just, I hope the right person wins. But like I said, with any of these albums, I'm okay with whoever takes it because they're all great body of work. Maybe some more than the other one, but I like D Smoke a lot because um, even though he's full, African American, he's not Hispanic a lot. He's done some good music for the Hispanic side from LA, from
Right.
Los Angeles, and he can rap in Spanish, man. I've heard
Okay,
him
Annie?
I've heard him fucking rap the dopest Spanish bars, man, like in Spanish
I didn't know.
fluently. Oh yeah,
I didn't even know he could rap in Spanish. I didn't
oh
know
yeah,
that.
fluently, man. And not only
Nice.
that, me a musician. He's a great pianist. He's a great musician overall.
Right.
Um, if you look into his story, his mom, I believe, was a backup singer for Michael Jackson. Like,
Okay.
don't really quote me on that, but I think I heard
I
it.
know wasn't he on that
The
um
Netflix, yeah,
the
the
Netflix
Netflix,
special? Yeah, he
yeah, yeah,
won, right? Right. Okay. Yeah.
he
Yeah,
won,
I knew
yeah.
that.
But that one video that he did, yeah, yeah, that one, he like I said, he comes cold with the bars in Spanish too, and I was like, man, this
Huh.
guy's overall like he
Right.
has it. He's dope. He reminds me of Kendrick a lot, but just
Right.
like with his style would be a little bit different. But like as far as like how his flow, he does his flow and stuff like that. So yeah, I heard his whole project, and I was at his project with the whole body of work, everything he did. Nas, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, man,
So,
That King's Disease album is ridiculous, bro.
oh yeah,
You
you
know.
know what I was talking about with somebody yesterday too. and because I was watching one of my favorite Hove albums. I mean, of course, Reasonable Doubt has to be my number one.
Right.
Um, I think Magna Carta, Holy Grail. I love that album. As
You
far
know
as
what? I get people that say they love that one, and then people that also say they love what was the album that he put out right after he came from out of retirement?
the Black Album. No, the Black Album.
No,
Yeah, the
the
Black
one
Album.
after
Right? Yeah,
the
the
Black
Black Album.
album. Yeah,
What
people always talk about those two.
wasn't
You
it?
know?
Okay, the one after that would be. Wasn't it a Blueprint
No,
album?
the one after the Black album. Oh man.
Damn, it's gonna bug me now. I'm
Yeah,
at
I
the.
know, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm doing my due diligence and I'm Googling shit right now. So
You know, and it's weird because like I should know this stuff, and I just can't remember. Um, let's see.
Kingdom Come.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
The Kingdom Come album. And I got it before I even Googled it. But yeah. So yeah, that one in Magna Carta, like people always have mixed reviews about them. I don't think they were two of Jay's best albums, in my personal opinion. You know what I mean? I there were songs on there that I like from
Let,
Magna
let,
Carta.
let
There
me tell
was
you something. Do you think? And this is what I told the other guy. No, the other person told me too. We were just talking about hip hop, and he said, "Am I the only one that feels like Magna Carta should have been an album that could have been released now? Like, you think he released it too early? Like, because I just re-listened to Magna Carta again yesterday, and man, I'm like, damn, like this album would have really, I think would have been it would have been better today. Like if it would have been released,
wow.
I don't know why I feel that way, but I
Yeah,
wasn't the
yeah,
only
yeah.
one. I wasn't the only one. So I don't know. I think it was just the timing, and a lot of people didn't understand why he was dropping an album like that. It was completely different from the rest of the body of work that he has, and it's
Right,
just.
right.
I mean, it's so like, what else is he gonna talk about, man? If he wants to fucking do museums and all that, art
Nah,
stuff.
look, Hove is the king of doing some different shit that
Yeah,
nobody else is doing, and then everybody's like, "Yo, that shit was dope." You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is what it is. For me, as a diehard Hove fan, like for me, like those just weren't two of his greatest albums for me.
right, right.
I love that he had certain singles off there that I could rock with. But as far as like getting in my car and throwing it in and letting it rock out the whole album, like it was just I feel
Right,
the
right.
same way about I feel the same way about American Gangster too. And a lot of people think that that was one of his best projects.
But
You know
yeah,
what I mean? And I
yeah,
just think it was okay. You know what I
right.
mean? Just call me a reasonable doubt head to the day I die or whatever.
Yeah,
But you know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
We
You
know
know,
that. We know
I mean,
that.
that and the Black Album, you know what I mean? Even 444 was a dope project. You know what I mean? It was only like a couple of songs off of that album that I really didn't like. You know what I mean? For the most part, and I got where we all understood where he was going with that album. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, and Hove, the best. He said it best himself. You know what I'm saying? You want the old Hove, play my old album. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's totally evolved. He's a different person. So why would you put out? And I've always thought that about. That's another thing as far as growth in the culture. Like I've always thought when an artist comes out with their first project, right? Especially if they deep from the hood, like the album is so street, it's so hard. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then I'm like, if you still putting out the same thing 5, 7 years later, that doesn't jive well with me. Like I like to see growth. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think you should be growing as an artist. That doesn't mean that you leave behind your hood. It doesn't mean any of that. It's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that there should be growth in your music as well.
Absolutely,
You've
absolutely.
traveled the world. You've made all this money. You've seen things that some people will probably never see in their lifetime. So that should be reflected in your art.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? That should be reflected in your art. So when an artist doesn't do that, I get pissed off because I feel like you're stealing shit away from the public. Like
Oh yeah,
you're stealing pieces of your own life away from the public because you're not putting it in your art. And
yeah.
and and I'm a firm believer that the truth is what sells. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like if you come across and people believe your story, people are more apt to buy into that than they are to buy into something that they know is fake. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know?
It's like if you can you imagine if Outkast would have just stayed the same from like their first album? You
Right,
know, it's saying stuff like that. Or
right.
any big artist, you know, the J. Cole's, the Kendricks. I don't think Kendrick's ever gonna put out a Good Kid, Mad City 2. I
I
just
don't
don't
think he
think
will
that
either.
he will.
No, not at all.
And that's just because he lives different now.
But he
Or
did,
it's like, you know,
but that album spoke for itself. That
right,
album is so good that he doesn't have to repeat it.
right,
You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? You want to hear that? Go back and listen to that album, and it'll tell you exactly where he was in his life at that point and at that time. You know what I mean? And I think that that's,
Exactly.
you know, when you get projects like that, that's what I live for. I live for
Right.
that. When you get a project that just speaks volumes to you, where it's like, damn, this person just brought me into their world, and I can see everything that they're talking about. I can visualize it. I can picture it clearly. You know, like I'm right there with you. You know, they can explain scenarios and situations that they were in, and I'm like, damn, I might have reacted the same way if I was in that situation. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you're supposed to do. You know, that's what your art is supposed to give people, man. You know,
Absolutely.
people tripped out on Outkast when they started expanding, when they started growing as a group, and Dre started becoming more abstract with the clothes that he wore.
Yeah.
And as he became more abstract with his clothes, his bars became even fucking tighter. You know what I'm saying? And he started to get that nod where it was like, yo, he's one of the best lyricists to ever touch a microphone. You know what I'm saying? But at the time, a lot of people didn't understand it. A lot of people didn't get it, but they started appealing to a whole new audience while they still kept a core audience from where they came from. You know what I mean? Their core audience didn't look at what they were doing and say, nah, that's not cool. You know what I'm saying? They looked at it and it was like, damn, these dudes are growing. You know, every time they come out, they get better.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? And that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, a perfect example of that too, when Lauryn Hill was with the Fugees, her stuff from when she did Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the style just completely different. Everything that she was talking about was just completely different from when she was with the Fugees.
Yeah.
There's still some similarities, but not as much. So she just went a whole different direction.
Yeah.
So there was a different, like, I believe that every artist should grow and make it different. Every album should be different. Every album should be different.
I mean,
Even
Lauryn Hill's first album was so dope that she only put out one album.
One album, and that's it.
And today she's still looked at as one of the best female MCs ever.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? From one album, and that album wasn't even predominantly rap. It was a lot of R&B on that album. A lot of the major songs that were hits were R&B songs. You know what I'm saying? But from that one album and from her time with the Fugees, she's still looked at as one of the best female MCs ever. And it's a title that she deserves, because we know that even though she did a lot of singing, she was capable of picking up that microphone and giving it to you. You know what I mean?
Like, man, yeah, I heard, especially when she was in the Fugees. Like, I still think she out-rapped Wyclef and the rest of, you know. Oh, I got a call. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I don't know. Like, I think overall, yeah, man, she didn't need to put out another album. You know.
Yeah. But what would have happened if she did, though? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm still waiting for one.
Yeah, it's moments like that. It's moments like that I look back on this coach and I'm like, damn, I would have loved to have seen another album from this person or that person or whatever. You know what I mean? Like Lauryn, yeah, hell yeah, I would have loved to see what that sophomore album would have been like. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
crazy.
Oh yeah, man, that
crazy. Yeah.
And you know what? A lot of and you got to remember too, because they call it the sophomore jinx. I don't know if it's only in R&B but it's.
That's just that's like that's all over sophomore jinxes. Any genre of music, that sophomore album is the hard one, because
right,
especially if you do mass
numbers.
and you clean up on your awards and all this shit on your first, like Cardi B, her second album, she's gonna have to go through what a lot of other people went through. That first album did so much that
Yeah.
that second album, you got to follow up with a killer. You
Oh
got
yeah.
to. You got to, bro. You
Yeah.
have to.
I think Chris Brown was somebody that was affected by that in a way, because that first Chris Brown album, there were almost all the songs there were radio singles, like
Right.
hits. And then when he came back with his second album, there was only like what two or three singles. But yeah, that I think it's hard to make when you first make a great album. And I think the reason why Reasonable Doubt is one of the greatest albums is because it wasn't viewed as a great album when it first came out. It took
a lot of people were slow to get it.
Yeah, it took people.
I got it immediately.
I know you did.
I got it immediately because I waited for that album. I waited from 1988 for that album until 96 because I was up on Hove from back then. You know what I mean? And I had heard him on songs and I had heard singles that were put out. And I was like, when this dude drops a fucking album, bro, it's got to be one of the best joints. Like I was just already in that mind frame. But for a lot of people, Reasonable Doubt wasn't a classic until 10 years later. You know what I mean?
It took time for people to really get
get
it. And me, it didn't take me a long time because, man, when I first heard Dead Presidents and,
man,
I was already like, this album was, and that's the only song that I had to hear that for me to really get into.
Yeah.
And I was 5 years old. I did listen. It took me when I was 10 when I finally fully heard the full project. Right. And that's when I was like, oh man, like this is a classic. And it was competing with a lot of other classic albums that were dropped that same year.
Yeah.
And Reasonable Doubt, I think, was one of those albums where it was always a classic, but it took time for people to get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he was able to do great with his follow-up album.
Yeah, I mean, and even his sophomore album got looked at like, oh no, that's not it. You know what I mean? A lot of people didn't like the route that he took to become more commercial. You know what I mean? They didn't understand. Like, look, this is growth. Like, what do you want him to do? Stand on the corner and sell crack for his whole fucking career? Yeah. Like, nah, man, you gotta evolve and get to another place. You know what I'm saying? So for me, even though I wasn't happy with the singles that they chose off of In My Lifetime Volume 1, I still think that was a great project. I still think it was a dope ass project. I think it was a great follow-up to Reasonable Doubt. And to keep it 100, when you have such a huge project like Nas with Illmatic, like that follow-up, it was written, there's no way it can touch Illmatic. It's just impossible. It's impossible. You can't do it, So the sophomore jinx, even if you have a successful sophomore album, it's still, in a lot of cases, it's never really can compare to that first album because the first album took you your whole life to make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You put all your experiences from the age of 2 years old, from the time you can remember, up until 18 years old or 20 years old or 25 years old or whatever, however old you are when you put that first album out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And that's absolutely true. Like, it's like from there, once you put all that on record, then what's left? Now you have to go on and experience something new for you to actually try to speak about that.
Yeah.
Traveling the world, the change of lifestyle, all that. It usually happens, but like I said, I wouldn't be happy if like Pope would have came out still rapping about crack on his second album like that too. Like
like the second and third album, it's like after a while you gotta. I mean, of course you're gonna have one or two. You're gonna have your hood anthems and your songs on it that are dedicated to the hood where you talk about stuff like that. But the rest of that project should reflect some growth. Like I think an MC that doesn't get mentioned in the name of the greats, the man who created the greatest of all time acronym, LL Cool J, this guy released his first album at the age of 16, 17 years old. You know what I mean? So for him to put out 13, 14 albums, I don't know how many it was, I think it was 13 or 14, and showed consistent growth on each album. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, I won't say it's hard to do because as an artist, that's what you strive for. You know what I mean? But to do it and then stay relevant is something that's not easy to do.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you put out 12, 13 albums, 14 albums. It's hard to, you can, I mean, you have artists that have put out that many albums, but they're relevant in a smaller space than
Right.
on a national scale.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
Jay's put out 13 albums. He put out another album. It's going to be on a national scale. It's going to
Oh
be on
yeah.
a global scale. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just somebody that's like, as opposed to somebody like KRS-One, who puts
Right.
out an album. His is going to be global, but it's just going to be on a smaller scale,
Skill.
right? Because everybody's not going to be attentive to KRS-One like they're going to be attentive to Jay-Z. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? But KRS-One's followers and his fans, they're going to be on it. You know what I mean? Whether it's album number 20 or whether it's album number 2. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But LL Cool J just doesn't get, when that conversation comes up, who's the greatest of all time, he's not mentioned in that conversation, and he should be. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, absolutely,
No,
100%.
I mean, you're using his acronym, you know, from an album from the greatest of all time, the GOAT. I mean, and you're not putting him in that category, and that doesn't make sense because, you know, throughout his career, he's had some hefty battles and he's never lost.
Oh yeah, man, that cannabis, man.
You
That
know,
was.
I think I think Cannabis had one of the hardest lines in that song that he had about L. You know, when he's, I forget it the whole line, but he says something, take your first, second, and third born, get on the horn and call Minister Farrakhan. You know what I mean? Like that was a dope line, but on a grand scale, you didn't beat LL, bro. You know
But
what I'm
see,
saying?
that's the crazy thing, because like I mean, you gotta admit, cannabis was one of the hardest up and coming lyricists during that time.
Yo, one of those artists where you look back and say, why didn't he make it? Like,
Yeah,
why didn't his music career really flourish?
right.
Right. So there had to be some bad business and bad blood somewhere in there that made that whole thing not happen for him. But yeah, he was one of those. I
But it,
remember him when he came out. I was like, yo, this dude right here's a problem.
yeah, he kind of reminded me a lot of Big L, man. A lot of like smooth, like just those double entendres sometimes, and those, man, those fucking punchlines were just stupid,
Yeah.
and like it's something that I would hear Big L easily kind of say, and he reminded me a lot of Big L, and maybe to other people he doesn't, but yeah, I definitely like his style. But you got to ask yourself too: was is he gonna be also one of those artists that's gonna stay in the same, doing the same thing all the time, and
Right.
that could cause him not reaching that magnitude of, as opposed to like a, LL Cool J or Nas, or
Right.
because
Right.
everyone, all of those people like Nas, he's still lyrical. He still drop an album, and you said it'll be in a global scale. It'll be
Right.
in a, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just some artists, I think some artists just choose not to want to take that route where they, like I said, they want to take the risk and make a more mainstream media, like music type. And I think that's the reason why albums end up not becoming so great after a while. If from an
Mm.
artist standpoint of view, like if one artist, like if Cannabis would have dropped 2, 3 albums, I I could probably tell you, like, guaranteed they're gonna be the same, right?
Okay.
Like right now, consecutively in 3 years, drop 3 albums, one back to back. I think they're just gonna sound the same.
Mm.
That's my that's what I would think.
Right. 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 I mean, it, you know, when I think about growth, I think about Meek Mill, right?
Right.
I remember Meek Mill's Flamers mixtapes, his Flamers mixtapes that he put out. I think he had
Yeah.
3 volumes of Flamers. I don't remember correctly. And then from there he went to his Dream Chasers series. You know, his
Yeah.
Dream Chasers 1, Dream Chasers 2, Dream Chasers 3, and then he got the deal and he put out, you know, the first album. And I can go back and I can listen to Dream Chasers 1 and I can hear the growth from Dream Chasers 1 all the way up to Championships, his
Mhm.
last album. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you know, to get Hove to go in the studio and do a verse
Yeah.
is not an easy thing to do for a lot of artists. And
Oh,
for Meek,
no, man.
to get that on his last album with Rick Ross and Hove on the same song, that spoke volumes to me. That spoke. It didn't only speak to me as Meek from Meek's standpoint as an artist showing his growth, but it also showed me that Hove sees that growth and was like, I want to contribute to that, right? Because there's a lot of artists that are signed to Rock Nation that have never had a whole verse. You know what I'm saying? So when Hove puts his stamp of approval on something, that speaks volumes to that artist. It speaks volumes to what they're doing as a person. It speaks volumes to the growth that they've accomplished. I don't think that and I think that's something. I think that's something that Hove takes very seriously before he decides to put his stamp on a song.
Yeah, to kind of engage with that. Yeah, I feel that 100.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, man, the culture is so, like I said in the beginning, man, it's so vast, bro, because, you know, nowadays, like I said, you got Fabio Foreign, you had Pop Smoke, you had King Von, Rowdy Rebel just came home from jail, you know what I'm saying? The whole GS9 crew. Like, I can't wait to see what those guys are gonna do with their music as well. You know, you know, and there's a lot more out there too. I don't know all the names and everything, but there's a lot more out there, and I think that they're gonna show us that they're capable of taking the torch and carrying this culture on to the next level. You know what I mean? And I think that's what it's all about. And even if you listen to a lot of these cats that do drill music and a lot of the younger artists, even like the dude that's got the hit out Whoopty right now, CJ, that just signed to French Montana, right? Coke Boys. And like all of these cats are coming out of New York hotbeds, out of Brooklyn and places like that. Like, it's like they're giving you their version of what hip hop is. But like I said, they're carrying the torch, because when you ask them, well, who did you listen to growing up? Most of them are gonna say 50 Cent, because most of them were kids in that era, in that 2003, 2004, 2005. That's when they really got turned on to hip hop music.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and if you listen to 50 and that's who your inspiration was, you got to go and think about who was 50's inspirations, right? You know what I'm saying? So, and if you ask yourself that question, 50's probably going to give you somebody from the 90s. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That was one of his major inspirations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with you on that, because like
say that again. You broke up.
2005.
You broke up.
And
Say that again.
Because I was I agree with what you said. I agree with what you said, because I was 14 years old in 2005, and one of the artists that started influencing me the most. Well, at that time, Kanye was like, I was all Kanye. Especially
Kanye was a god back then.
Dropout, and then he comes back with Late Registration. Oh man,
back
to back. And then the game comes out.
Yeah.
And when the game came out, I was happy. A West Coast artist, fresh West Coast artist.
Yeah.
Bar heavy. The documentary, one of my favorite albums too.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting influenced more by his influences, which how he said on the Dream record. He said, why did I just forget it, man? People want to know the outcome. I say Reasonable Doubt, Doggy Style, and he names his 3 top favorite albums, and then that's when I started really listening and going to his influences.
Yeah.
And that's when I became more of a like, okay, you know what? Hip hop is cool right now, but no, I want to be this gritty, like bar heavy dude. Like that's who I want to be. That's who he kind of like took me to. So I understand and I agree with you when you say that. Yeah, that during that time, a lot of us were either teenagers or barely growing up.
Right.
And 50 was blowing at that time, man. Yeah. He's the max
was for like about a good 18 months to 24 months. 50 was the hottest thing on the fucking planet. Globally. globally, not just in New York, like globally. He was the hottest dude on the planet, yo. And like I have even with Kendrick Lamar and the way that he took over when he came out, I don't think I don't think it was as as full as what 50 did. Like 50, I don't know, man. When 50 came out, everything stopped moving. Everything, everything. Like there was
Yeah.
nobody else that could put you. People put out music. Don't get me wrong. People put out music. People had hits. But if you ask anybody, what do you remember about 2003 musically, as far as hip hop is concerned, 50 Cent's gonna be the first thing that comes out your mouth. I don't even remember.
I'd say Wayne too, though. I'd easily say Wayne too, though.
Yeah, because Wayne was always hot. Yeah, I'll give you that. Wayne's always had a thorough following. Like
Yeah.
his fans are really good fans. I'll give that to him. You know, I don't know, man. I just remember
He had man, he was crazy.
50 when 50 came out. It reminded me of like when Nas dropped Illmatic, because in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, that whole tri-state area, that's all we heard. That's all you heard out of every car, in every club. It was 50.
And
50
you guys were listening to mixtapes prior
prior
to
to that. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
When
Yeah,
no when only the East Coast really knew who 50 was, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because I didn't I didn't know about Fifth until the In the Club came out, to be
yeah.
honest.
See,
First time I ever heard it.
I still go back and listen to 50 Cent is the Future, which is a
Right.
mixtape that he put out. I still go back and listen to that mixtape all the way through, from song one to the last song on that mixtape, because the mixtape was so dope. I mean, he just had the streets on lock, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, but yeah, even 50, as far as growth, right? Since we're talking about growth, like his show for life, and he's getting ready to do the BMF story, and he's got the power and the power spinoffs, and like just
He's,
pure.
I think he still drops some crazy hot records from time to time too.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
He
every now
still
and then
does.
he'll drop something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give him that. Yeah, I definitely. But I love to see the growth of what he's doing. I love the way that he's taking over Hollywood right now, and they're letting him put out these stories that he wants to tell. And these are
Right.
stories that I think need to be told for us in general. You know what I mean? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times what happens in Hollywood is that they'll get a hold of a story of ours, but they won't tell it the way that it needs to be told. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And
All
I
the time.
think I think for the most part, like even with Power Book 2, which is not as great as Power, and I've got my feelings about it. It's not as dope as I thought it was gonna be, but it's all right. Um, I think that I think Fifth is trying to tell those stories that need to be told. I think he's
Right.
trying to let people into our world and say, look, man, you may see it from one point, but we always see it from a different point. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, black and brown people just in general, like we look at things differently. We don't look
Yeah.
at things the way that white America looks at it. You know what I mean? We always look at things with a different eye,
Right.
because we've been trained and taught to do that, because that's just how society has
Yeah.
been towards us, that we have to look at things with a different eye. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um, so I think it's good to have more of our people in positions where they can tell our stories the way that they need to be
They
told.
need exact. Yeah, man. I completely agree with you on that. Um, it's just I'm waiting more for more artists to grow like that, and I want to see young artists try to develop into something like that earlier than waiting 20 years into their career, or as opposed to like let's say for example the baby wants to go and do a filming, and I would
Yeah,
like to see something like that. That would be
yeah,
awesome. One story, or do
yeah.
something like is doing. I would like to see a lot more younger artists transition into
I
a
think we're gonna
position
see
that
that. I think we're gonna start to see that. Like, because I was just checking the numbers the other day, right? And I was thinking to myself, okay, Hove announced that he was a billionaire in 2019,
yeah.
right? Um, so that was 23 years from the time that he dropped Reasonable Doubt.
Mhm.
right? Kanye West is a billionaire, and his first album came out what 15 years ago.
Yeah, 2003, 2004, 2003. I think College Dropout came out 2003. Yeah, because 2004 was
Okay, so what 17 years or whatever it is.
yeah,
So I think you're going to see an influx of that. I think the next person who you're going to see from hip hop that's going to become a billionaire, that's going to branch out and grow in other areas and do all these different things, they're going to do it in 10 years. And then there's going to somebody's going to come along that's going to do it in 7 years. Then
right,
somebody's going to come along that's going to do it in 5 years. And from there, the blueprint is laid. Like
yeah.
it's going to be a consistent thing that
It's,
you're going to see across the board within our culture. You know
do
what I
you
mean?
think
And I that's what I love about Hope, because he gave you a blueprint of
right?
what he did. It may not work for everybody, but what he did, it worked for him. You
Right.
know, but that what he did is he gave a lot of people hope. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And for us, sometimes coming out of our community, sometimes hope is the biggest thing that you can fucking have, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
Fortunately, yeah.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately. But yeah.
do you think that the reason why the consistency might just kind of get smaller and smaller within the years, as a, like, for example, you just said in 5 years it's going to take somebody 7 years, or and stuff like that. Do you think that has to do with the fact that we have all this sort of technology now, and we have
Yeah.
many ways to try to actually achieve our dream? Because obviously back in 96 you couldn't just be like, hey, I'm gonna go to the homie's house, and because
Right.
he has a microphone, he has an interface, and he has Pro
Mhm.
Tools on lock, and boom, let's go
Right.
and record. So do you think that that's becoming easier just based on the technology as a whole that we have, and the opportunities with the social networking and stuff like that, or
I think it's a combination of all of those things. You know what I mean? I think that what I think the most is that the millennial generation don't want to be broke. I think that's the first thing.
mm,
That's the first thing,
right?
right? Because what they see is not always real life, but they want to make it real life. What they
Mm,
see on Instagram, they know, okay, this may not be real life. This person may not really own a Maybach. They may not really own a, you know, a Lamborghini or whatever, but they're thinking at a young age, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They're like, I want to be able to live like that.
right.
Right. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing on top of all of that, which makes that dream which can make that dream a reality, is because there is technology out there. And then on top of the technology, there's people that are still relevant that look back and say, you can do it too. I
Yeah.
did it, you can do it too. You
More
know
of
what
an
I'm saying?
influencer, kind of like it's influencing the
Yeah.
older generations, influencing
Yeah,
the younger
like
ones.
anybody that listened to Kanye in 2005, that was your age, and in that age bracket coming up back then, around that time when Ye was the hottest dude on the planet, they're all looking at Ye right now saying, yo, I can do exactly what he's doing. Most of them are already doing it. You're
Yeah,
already in Japan. You're already working on your dream. You're already doing what you want to do for a living, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
and that comes from you seeing that at a young age, that something inspired you that made you say, look, I want to be able to do this. I want to be
yeah.
able to get up. I want to be able to get up every morning and do this. This is what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
I think that comes from seeing, your predecessors and people that came before you. I think it comes from seeing those people and believing in what they showed you. You know what I'm saying? Like they gave you music that you could identify with, but yet they also showed you something that you had never seen before, which gave
right.
you the courage to say, I can do that too. So I
Yeah,
think that's a big
it's
thing.
also like a big. Um, I think ultimately it's whoever really wants it at the end of the day too, because
Yeah.
you can take all this vast knowledge that's being given to you basically for free, but if you don't know how to, use it or utilize it to your best advantage, then what does that? You're gonna be in the same position.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's at the end of the day, I feel like it's whoever wants it the most too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, with that being said, I do think that the newer generations to come are definitely going to have it a lot much easier than me. Well, a lot much easier than you coming up, OG, because I know you couldn't just go to the studio like how I just because you wanted to go.
It was not
know?
easy, B.
It
I'm
was
trying to tell you. I'm not
I
even gonna hold you. It was not easy at all for my
I
generation, bro. You know, like it was
feel that.
just
I feel that 100%.
but we
I'm
but we
blessed.
loved but we loved it.
I'm blessed growing up. I feel like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but we loved it so much, man, that it was like, well, I'll speak for myself. I loved it so much that, you know, even today, I still always do something that keeps my foot inside this industry door. You know
right.
what I'm saying? Um, I'm fortunate enough where I can mostly pick and choose, you know, what artists I want to cover, what artists I feel like interviewing and things of that nature. Like I've put in enough work where I can do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think my track record speaks for itself. When I bring something to the table, I'm bringing something to the table with passion. You know what I'm saying? Um, and most of the time, the outlets that I work with and stuff like that, it doesn't take them long to see that. You know what I mean? You know, and I think that that's a good thing, but that only comes from the passion that I have for the culture. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? I'm always gonna have passion for this culture, man. Always,
Yeah.
because for me, hip hop was always there, even when nobody else was. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I could always put them headphones on, and the music would always take me to another world. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So for me to be a creative person, that came from being able to be a part of this culture, man. It came from looking out my window in the projects and being able to see it. And then it came from moving to a neighborhood in Queens where I got to be a part of it. You know what
Right.
I mean? And then, from there, it just stemmed, throughout the years, man, just always being able to have my foot in the door and just do something to contribute something to the culture, man. I think that's the biggest thing, man. You know what I mean? You want to be able to look back on shit when you're gone and be like, even if it's a minuscule amount, you want to be able to look back and say, I did something. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
I was fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly, man.
I feel
So,
that 100%.
yes. So my brother, man, thank you very much, man, for joining me again on episode 12 of the Essence, man. I really appreciate you stepping in and being my sidekick and my homie and my partner doing this with me, man. You know what I mean? Like,
Anytime, bro.
yeah,
Anytime.
man.
You're the hip hop encyclopedia, man. Helps me out a lot too. Every conversation we have, I always gain some new knowledge. I have confidence that in another 10 years, I'll take all that knowledge that you passed down to me, and I'm gonna be the next hip hop
and
encyclopedia.
and pass that on down to the next generation,
Exactly,
man.
man.
Yeah,
Family
definitely.
heirloom.
Definitely, man. Well, yo, this has been episode 12, people. Validated Magazine, Tent TV collaboration, man. You already know what it is. It's the Essence, and we will catch y'all on the next one. Out.
Peace.